After watching 8 years of BookTube, I finally decided this is the year to create my own. Hi, I'm Shreya, I'm 22, I'm from Sydney. Honestly, I think 2025 was the perfect year to start a BookTube because we have so many good releases on the way, and I want to tell you some of mine, and hopefully you can add some of these to your own TBRs. I read mostly fantasy, a little bit of romance, and then I dip my toe in mystery and other genres like that. That is mostly what this list is going to look like. Also, if you see me looking at the viewfinder, this is really hard. I don't know how booktubers do it. Genuinely, I just want to stare at myself up there. I'm so sorry. Please ignore it. This is my first time, so be lenient. Our first section is fantasy, and we are about to get fed this year. Starting off strong with Catabasis by R.F. Kuang, which is about two rival grad students who study magic at Cambridge. They have to journey down into hell to save their professor's soul. What? Apparently this includes a lot of Dante, Orpheus, and there's magic, there's apparently a bit of romance, tragic romance probably, dark academia vibes. It just sounds phenomenal. I have read all of R.F. Kuang's books. I think R.F. Kuang is gonna knock it out of the park. She hasn't failed me yet. And like, what an insane concept. The next one is Rebel Witch by Kristen Ciccarelli. I really enjoyed this book last year, and I'm very, very excited to see how this goes. It is only a duology, so this is the conclusion. I'm interested to see how the author is going to wrap everything up. The concept is that Rune, our main character, is in the aristocracy of our society where witches are hunted and exterminated. And she is a witch. She's a witch vigilante known as the Crimson Moth, and she goes around saving witches who are slated for execution. She ends up gaining the attraction and kind of falling for the leader of the witch hunters, the worst of them all. But in the last book, and this isn't really a spoiler, I mean, it all comes crumbling down, the cat's out the bag, and Rune is currently on the run. She and the witch hunter need to team up in this book. This kind of reminds me of the sorts of books that got me into fantasy or got me into loving reading back when I was in high school. I definitely recommend this. And next on the list, I won't be waiting very long for this because it's Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros, which releases later in January, and it's the third book in the Empyrean series. So, oh, I'm so sorry. If you haven't read the Empyrean, it follows a girl called Violet who is sent to become a rider at a war college. Not just a rider, like a dragon rider. There's a lot of dragons, magic, evil, oh, romance, of course. To be honest, I thought this was fun. I gave it 4 stars, even though I thought it was a little juvenile, but this was, I didn't like it. I really didn't. Until around here, when things actually started happening, this was just some back and forth. Very boring. But this, the plot started moving. It leaves a lot of questions unanswered for the next book. I really hope that this third book doesn't suffer from, you know, middle book syndrome, and that the plot picks up, things start happening. If I see any more back and forth romantically between our main characters, I'm gonna be so annoyed, because that was the worst thing about Iron Flame. Our next one is Rose in Chains by Julie Soto. This is a very interesting premise. A princess has her castle, her kingdom, captured by an enemy kingdom, and all of the survivors who were not killed by the enemy have been taken and auctioned off to powerful families of the enemy kingdom. She's sold to a high-ranking enemy who belongs to a cold, ruthless, and very powerful family in the enemy kingdom. If you haven't guessed, this was a Dramione fanfiction, and she's reworked it into an original story. I did previously read Not Another Love Song by Julie Soto last year, which was a reworked Star Wars fanfiction. I actually really ended up enjoying it. And I always really do enjoy seeing fanfics get traditionally published. The next book, it is Fearless by Lauren Roberts. This is the sequel to Powerless. Powerless, obviously, girl without magic, has to pretend she has magic in a Hunger Games-like situation. Now in this book, I think the author was just trying to create romance because nothing happened at all. This was just a lot of forced proximity. But once again, it ends on a cliffhanger. So I'm hoping the next book, which is the final book in the series, will clarify all of this, clean things up a little bit. And I also really hope the editor edits this time, because the amount of typos, oh my god. Regardless of me complaining, I would say that this series is just a fun, easy YA read. Next is a series that BookTube and BookTok just don't talk about enough, and it is this series by Vanessa Len. The third and final book, Once a Villain, is coming out very soon, and when I tell you that this series is criminally underrated, I need everyone to read it. Our main character, Joan, is a monster, and in this world, monsters are people who can time travel by stealing human life, so time, out of other people. But of course, There are monster hunters and they come from very powerful families. Joan's family in the first book, there is an attack on their family, and she and the son of one of the monster hunting clans have to team up to correct something that went wrong. Oh, and did I mention, yes, she's a monster, and yes, she teams up with a monster hunter, but there is a third character, and that character has been foretold in a prophecy to end up ending the monster line, I think. But he is also foretold to fall in love with Joan, and that their love will kill each other, like a star-crossed, fatal, unavoidable, written in the stars. There's no second book syndrome here. These are both just amazing. I don't really remember what happens, to be quite frank with you. I do need to do a reread, but once again, things were left a bit of a mess in the last book, and I'm really excited to see how she cleans it up. And then we have The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. If you have read these two, you know they're very gothic, very misty in their vibes, and she's carrying that through to The Night and the Moth. So this new book is going to be about a prophetess who has to go on a quest accompanied by a knight to defy the gods. Why? I don't know, but I trust Rachel Gillig. I enjoyed this a lot. I know it's going to be magical, mystical, a little bit spooky, but ultimately just great. This next one I need immediately, and it is Accomplice to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Mehra, and it is the book that follows book 2, Apprentice to the Villain. I don't know where book 1 is. Hold on, look at that. It's on the book tower. The Assistant to the Villain series is just so much fun. It's silly, it's slapstick comedy. It doesn't take itself seriously at all. So it's kind of, in a way, a caricature of a medieval fantasy. There's nothing serious about it. I mean, the villain in the series is called The Villain, but it's about a sunshine assistant called Evie and her boss, The Villain, and their plans to wreak havoc on the kingdom. And they're also really oblivious. They like each other, but they don't want to admit it. It's just very enjoyable. If you need a bit of a laugh, a bit of a relaxing time, and look how tiny they are. It's a very quick read and you'll just enjoy it so long as you're not taking it too seriously. Penguin sent me this one, and God bless you, Penguin, for introducing me to this, because I was giggling reading it. The next one I have been waiting for an entire year, and it's Illusions of Fire. This is about a young girl in New York City who is secretly the descendant of a mythological bloodline of secret keepers tracing back to the Mahabharata, which is a Hindu epic. And then a new boy arrives in town, and he is also descended from a bloodline in the Mahabharata of a demigod. I am Hindu, and I have always wished that someone would create a story like this, because there is so much material. There is so many beautiful stories, epics, legends, gods. I am so glad that Nisha is doing this. I will be sat for Hindu Percy Jackson. For now, that's all I have for fantasy, so on to romance. First up is Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry, and this is about a reclusive former socialite who invites two rival writers to her house to compete as to who will end up writing her biography. She gives each of them little snippets of her story, and they have to basically compete to see who will be able to write the full thing. If you have heard The Last Great American Dynasty by Taylor Swift, apparently this is supposed to be kind of based off it, or kind of similar to Rebecca's story. And that is one of my favorite Taylor Swift songs, so I am really excited for this, as well as the fact that this is an Emily Henry romance about two writers. She always eats that up. Emily Henry is one of my auto-buy authors. She has never disappointed me. And then we have Rewind It Back by Liz Tomforde, and I personally think Liz Tomforde writes the best sports romances. If she writes a sports romance, I'm gonna read it. Now, I don't know too much about this book, but I do know that it's Rio's book. Rio is just such a fun little poodle sort of character, if you get what I mean. Like, you know what I mean. Liz's sports romances are always top tier. Her book The Right Move was one of my favorites of all time, so this is going to be just very, very adorable, and that whoever our female character is, Rio is going to be obsessed with her. And if Liz Tomforde is the queen of sports romances, Elsie Silver is the queen of western romances, and I'm very much looking forward to Wild Side. It is a marriage of convenience between, as far as I remember, a pretty grumpy guy and a woman who absolutely hates him and is constantly sniping at him. The streets are saying that Reese, the main character, is going to be obsessed with Tabby, our female character, and she's going to hate him. And it got even better when someone told me that Reese was inspired by Roman Reigns. I'm so ready. Our next book is Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. Let's be quite frank, I know nothing about this, but it's an Abby Jimenez book, which means firstly I'm gonna read it, but also it's gonna be pretty emotional, deep, but like really funny. It is based on a Wildest Dreams lyric, the title. So if this book feels anything like that song, I'm gonna devour it. I don't need to know what's going on, I will be reading it. The next one is kind of, like, I can't really believe I'm saying it, but Deep End by Ali Hazelwood. I have been converted into Ali Hazelwood's fan base because I did not like those STEM series, you know, the ones I'm talking about. But her past couple have been great. We had Check and Mate, and then we had Bride, and then we had Not in Love, and I really enjoyed those. And she's diving into new territory once again with a sports romance between a swimmer and a diver, both of whom are destined for the Olympics. And they have a little arrangement going on. That's all I need to know. I'm gonna be reading it. Although it's a pity about the cover. Last but not least for romance is Sounds Like Love by Ashley Poston. If you've read Ashley Poston's books, they're very much magical realism grounded. I think I have like a couple in the tower, if you can see that far. This book, definitely my favorite of hers yet. The magical realism aspects are just really well thought out. This book is about a successful yet slightly depressed songwriter and a grumpy, quiet local who both have the same song stuck in their head. We only have two little sections left. The first is Dystopia, and this is a blast from the past because the first one on this list is Watch Me by Tahira Murphy. It's a continuation of the Shatter Me series set 10 years after the fall of the Re-establishment, and it follows Aaron, Warner, and Juliet's son. And this son breaks onto Ark Island and is faced with a trained assassin on that island. Honestly though, forget the son. I don't really care about the son. I'm excited to see Juliet and Lorna and Nazira and Kenji all being happy. That's what I want to see. Very much in the theme of nostalgia. The next one is I was about to say the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Sunrise on the Reaping. This is Haymitch's Hunger Games during the Quarter Quell, and I love Haymitch. I'm expecting it to be traumatizing, expecting it to be sad, but I'm back in my Hunger Games era, especially after having watched the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Only two books left. The first is The Crash by Frida McFadden, and that comes out later this month actually. Frida's books are short, sweet. They make you feel like you're thinking when you don't actually need to think at all. This specific one is about a pregnant woman who gets caught in a blizzard while driving, and a really friendly couple offers her their cabin, but she soon realizes she's in grave danger. And if you have read a Frida book, you know that it's not as simple as it seems. There is a plot twist somewhere in here. There is something you never saw coming in here. The next one is called You Are Fatally Invited by Andre Pliego, whose books I have not read before. If you guys have read And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, which is one of my favorite mystery novels of all time, this very much sounds like that. There are 6 writers who write thriller novels who are invited to an island for a thriller retreat, and they need to use their tropes, their puzzles, things like that in order to successfully complete the retreat. But what happens when a guest ends up dead? That's all I know about it. I think they keep dying like flies, which is why I said And Then There Were None. It's upon our main characters to work out what's going on. That is not all that's on my TBR. There is quite a bit more, which you can find on my Goodreads, but these are the ones I'm looking forward to the most and the ones I'd recommend that you read as well. They sound absolutely amazing. We also have more new releases from Taylor Jenkins Reid, V.E. Schwab, Maggie Stiefvater. Like, we are going to be fed, watered, rested for the rest of the year. So happy 2025, please subscribe, and also my Goodreads is below in case you want to see absolutely everything I want to read this year, because there are so many things I did not mention that I will be reading. Instagram and BookTok are also somewhere down below. Thank you, bye!